Have you ever found yourself asking, am I just too sensitive? Did I misunderstand? Am I overreacting again? If you have ever loved someone who made you slowly, quietly, lose trust in your own reality and your own feelings, then this video is for you. You are not crazy. And you are not alone. Let me explain exactly what happened to your mind. What makes loving a covert narcissist so profoundly painful is not that they are constantly cruel. If they were, your survival instincts would have kicked in much sooner, and you would have walked away. The real devastation comes from the fact that they make you believe the love is still there. People who fall in love with covert narcissists are rarely abandoned immediately or obviously. Instead, they are kept tethered by the tiniest, most agonizing fragments of hope. This is exactly why it takes intelligent, self-aware people years, sometimes decades, to finally recognize the reality of what they are experiencing. If someone is consistently terrible to you, leaving them is a relatively straightforward decision for your brain to process. But a covert narcissist operates in the shadows of your affection. They alternate, they shift, almost seamlessly, between being cold, distant, and deeply dismissive, to suddenly becoming incredibly sweet, intensely attentive, and fiercely romantic. This creates a cycle of breadcrumbing. You become emotionally hooked on these rare, fleeting moments of tenderness. When they pull away and give you the silent treatment, you feel desperate, anxious, and confused. But when they finally turn their warmth back toward you, the psychological relief is intoxicating. Those positive moments create a powerful, blinding illusion. They make you tell yourself, this is who they truly are. The amazing person I fell in love with is still in there. And so, you wait. You endure the emotional starvation and the passive aggression, simply waiting for that perfect, loving version of them to resurface. This cycle pulls you into a devastating psychological trap. The relentless desire to fix the relationship by fixing yourself. Because they have shown you how incredibly good they can be, you begin to internalize the bad moments as a problem that you can solve. You start to believe that if you just love them a little harder, if you change your tone of voice, if you are just a little more patient, or if you ask for a little less, everything will finally be okay again. You begin to continuously mold, shrink, and alter your entire personality, endlessly adapting to their shifting moods. You spend all your mental energy trying to become the perfect, unproblematic partner, completely forgetting to ask yourself if you are even being treated with basic human decency. You need to understand something very important right now as you listen to this. You did not stay because you were weak, or foolish, or naive. You stayed because you are deeply empathetic, and you believed in the potential of the person sitting across from you. You stayed because your greatest strengths, your patience, your forgiveness, and your capacity to love were quietly and systematically weaponized against you. A covert narcissist doesn't strip away your sanity overnight. They don't walk into your life and immediately demand that you stop trusting yourself. If they did, you would simply walk away. Instead, they erode your reality, slowly, with 1,000 tiny, invisible cuts. Think back to the beginning of the relationship. You likely had a very clear sense of yourself. When something bothered you, you had the inner clarity to recognize it and say that was crossing a line, or that really hurt me. You trusted your own emotional compass. But slowly, month by month, that inner voice was dismantled. The certainty of, this hurt me, was quietly replaced by a persistent, haunting echo of self-doubt. You started constantly asking yourself, wait, did I misunderstand them? Am I just being too sensitive? Am I overreacting again? This doesn't happen by accident. It is the direct result of the most insidious weapon a covert narcissist possesses: subtle gaslighting. You see, a covert narcissist rarely looks you in the eye and shouts, "You are wrong." That kind of overt aggression would be too obvious. It would give you something concrete to push back against. Instead, their gaslighting is delivered with a calm demeanor, sometimes even wrapped in feigned concern or mild, exhausted annoyance. When you bring up a valid hurt, they look at you and say things like, You're imagining things. I never meant it that way. You're just twisting my words. Why are you always making problems out of nothing? You're just too emotional right now. These phrases are psychological poison. They don't just deny your experience. They subtly shift the blame onto your perception. They convince you that the problem isn't their behavior, but your flawed interpretation of it. And because you are an empathetic person, because you want to be fair and understanding, you actually stop and consider their point. You try to see it from their perspective. And in doing so, you begin to abandon your own. After months or years of this psychological conditioning, a profound shift happens within you. You become the chronic apologizer. You begin to apologize for everything. You apologize for being sad. You apologize for crying over the pain they caused you. You apologize for needing a moment of basic comfort. You even find yourself apologizing for asking a simple, perfectly reasonable question. Eventually, you reach a heartbreaking psychological state where you feel like your very existence, your thoughts, your feelings, your basic human needs, is a heavy burden to them. You stop bringing up your concerns entirely, because attempting to communicate only leads to you feeling worse, more confused, and more guilty than before you spoke up. They didn't just break your heart, they broke your internal compass. And this is the most agonizing part of the abuse. When you can no longer trust your own perception of reality, you become entirely dependent on theirs. At a certain point in this relationship, a profound and tragic shift occurs. You are no longer a person in love. You have quietly transformed into a bomb disposal expert inside your own home. Love is supposed to be a place of rest, a sanctuary where you can take off your armor and simply breathe. But your body quickly learned that resting was dangerous. To survive the deeply unpredictable emotional climate of a covert narcissist, your brain was forced to develop a new, exhausting superpower. You became an absolute master at reading their emotions. Think about the sheer amount of mental energy you expended every single day. You didn't just listen to the words they spoke. You analyzed the microscopic shifts in their tone. You started scanning their eyes the very second they walked into a room. You learned to interpret the exact meaning of a heavy sigh. You could tell if you were going to be punished by the way they closed a kitchen cabinet, the rhythm of their footsteps in the hallway, or the way they set down their coffee cup. Even when you were apart, you became a forensic analyst of their text messages. You would agonize over a missing emoji, a slightly delayed response, or a sudden change in punctuation. Your brain was constantly gathering and analyzing data to answer one terrifying, looping question: are they mad at me today? This is the agonizing reality of walking on eggshells. You were forced to live in a state of chronic, agonizing unpredictability. One day, they might be affectionate, engaging, and entirely present. But the very next day, for absolutely no logical reason, they turn into a wall of ice. They withhold affection, they weaponize their silence, and they look at you with a quiet, simmering contempt that makes your blood run cold. Because they rarely tell you directly why they are punishing you, your brain automatically assumes it must be your fault. You convinced yourself that you must have done something wrong to cause this sudden withdrawal of love. So you scramble, you overcompensate, you try to be quieter, softer, more accommodating. You start managing their emotions, hoping that if you can just make them happy, you will finally be allowed to feel safe. But here is the deep psychological truth. You never actually get to feel safe. Even on the good days, even when everything seems peaceful and they are being kind, you cannot truly relax. Your nervous system simply won't let you. Instead of enjoying the peace, you are sitting there, holding your breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. You are bracing yourself for the inevitable moment when their mask slips and the coldness returns. If you have been feeling physically drained, chronically fatigued, or constantly on edge, please hear this. It is not in your head. Your nervous system has been fundamentally hijacked. You have been forced to live in a prolonged state of hyperarousal, a constant fight, flight, or freeze response, just to navigate the person who was supposed to be your safe haven. You are exhausted because your body has been fighting a quiet, invisible war every single day, trying to protect you from the person you loved. How small did you have to shrink yourself just to fit into the life of someone who is never satisfied? If you look back at the person you were before this relationship began, you will likely remember someone entirely different. You had your own vibrant hobbies. You had close friends you loved spending time with. You had strong opinions, a distinct personality, and a clear sense of your own light. But a covert narcissist does not want to partner with a strong, independent identity. To them, your independence is a psychological threat. It means you have a life outside of their control. So they begin the slow, methodical process of erasing who you are. It doesn't happen through loud, terrifying demands. It happens through subtle, exhausting conditioning. A slightly mocking comment about a hobby you are passionate about. A heavy, judgmental sigh when you mention you want to see your friends. A passive-aggressive mood swing that ruins an entire weekend, simply because you made a minor decision without centering them first. Over time, your nervous system learns a tragic lesson. Having your own life is simply too emotionally expensive. The cost of their retaliation, even if it is just days of agonizing silence, is too high. So without even realizing it, you begin to filter every single choice through their perspective. Before you speak, before you wear a certain outfit, before you make a plan, your mind automatically runs a threat assessment. Will they like this? Will this upset them? Is doing this worth the punishment? Slowly, month by month, year by year, you systematically dismantle your own identity. You stop doing the things that bring you joy. You mute your own opinions. You trade your entire sense of self for the desperate, exhausting hope of keeping the peace. You forget what it feels like to just be you. This loss of self leads to the most devastating phase of covert abuse: profound, suffocating isolation. Many people assume that abusers physically lock their victims away from the world, but in a relationship with a covert narcissist, you often isolate yourself. You stop calling your family because you don't want to lie about how miserable you are, but you also feel too much shame to tell them the truth. You stop making plans with your friends because it is simply easier to stay home than to endure the narcissist's sudden, icy withdrawal before you leave or after you return. You also withdraw because you begin to feel like no one on the outside could possibly understand. The covert narcissist is usually brilliant at public relations. They show the world a flawless, charming, highly empathetic mask. If you tried to explain the invisible torment you were enduring behind closed doors, you feared people would look at you with disbelief. You feared they would think you were the crazy one. This isolation is not an accident. It is the invisible wall they needed to build around you. Because when you are completely cut off from your support system, and when you have entirely forgotten who you are outside of the relationship, the idea of leaving doesn't just feel difficult. It feels impossible. You wake up one day, look in the mirror, and realize the person staring back at you is a ghost. Perhaps the most deeply confusing and shameful part of this entire experience happens after the relationship finally ends. You are free. The person who caused you so much agonizing pain is gone. And yet, in the quiet moments of the night, you realize something terrifying. You miss them. This realization often brings a crushing wave of guilt and self-judgment. You ask yourself, how could I possibly miss someone who treated me so terribly? What is wrong with me? Am I addicted to the pain? I need you to listen to me very carefully. You are not addicted to pain. You are experiencing a trauma bond. And a trauma bond does not mean that you love them more deeply than anyone else. It is a powerful, biological, and psychological tether created by a specific, relentless cycle. Think about how the relationship operated. They would hurt you. They would give you the silent treatment, or subtly gaslight you, plunging you into a state of deep anxiety and despair. Your nervous system would be screaming in distress. But then, just when you felt like you couldn't take it anymore, they would suddenly change. They would offer you a breadcrumb of affection, a sweet text, an apology that sounded incredibly genuine, a moment of intense, romantic connection. In that moment, the profound emotional relief you felt was intoxicating. Your brain flooded with dopamine. But here is the tragic psychological trap. Your brain began to associate the profound relief of the pain with the person who caused the pain in the first place. The covert narcissist successfully positioned themselves as both the poison and the antidote. Your mind was conditioned to subconsciously believe that the only person who could soothe your agony was the person who was actively inflicting it. That is what a trauma bond is. It is the desperately confusing experience of seeking safety in the exact place where you are being destroyed. So when you are sitting alone, crying because you miss them, you need to forgive yourself. Because the truth is, you do not miss the abuse. You do not miss walking on eggshells, or feeling like your existence is a burden, or constantly apologizing for your own feelings. What you actually miss are those rare, calculated moments of mercy. You miss the illusion. You miss the promises they made when they were trying to pull you back in. You miss the person they pretended to be in the very beginning, and the phantom of a relationship you worked so tirelessly to build. Missing them is not a sign that you made a mistake by leaving, and it certainly does not mean they were right for you. It is simply the withdrawal symptom of a nervous system that was repeatedly shattered and glued back together. You are detoxing from an illusion. It is a physical and psychological unwinding, and it is completely okay if it hurts. Even long after the relationship has ended, the psychological echoes of a covert narcissist will likely remain in your nervous system. Healing from this kind of profound emotional manipulation is not as simple as packing your bags and walking out the door. You might notice that you are still carrying the survival mechanisms you were forced to learn. You might still find yourself apologizing excessively to new people in your life, terrified that the slightest misunderstanding will cause them to abandon you. You might struggle deeply with trusting anyone, constantly searching their words for hidden meanings or waiting for their mask to slip. You might still feel a lingering sense of guilt whenever you try to set a boundary, or feel like your completely normal emotional needs are somehow a massive burden to the people around you. If you are experiencing this, you might be looking in the mirror right now, heavily criticizing yourself. You might be telling yourself, I need to just get over this. I need to be stronger. Why am I so weak? Please, take a deep breath and let go of that narrative right now. You are not struggling because you are weak. You are struggling because your brain and your body spent months or years adapting to a highly toxic, entirely unpredictable emotional environment. Your nervous system did exactly what it was supposed to do. It kept you alive in the dark. It just takes time for your body to realize that the war is finally over and that it is safe to put the armor down. The path to recovering from a covert narcissist rarely begins with a massive, triumphant roar of independence. It begins much more quietly. It begins with tiny, almost invisible moments of reclaiming your reality. It happens the first time you feel a negative emotion, and instead of asking yourself, am I overreacting? You softly say, my feelings are valid, and I am allowed to be hurt. It happens the first time you set a small boundary, and even though your hands are shaking, you do not apologize for it. It happens when you slowly begin to reconnect with the friends you lost, and you rediscover the hobbies, the passions, and the brilliant light you had to dim just to keep someone else comfortable. I want you to remember this ultimate truth. The greatest sign of your healing is not the day you finally stop remembering them. The greatest sign of your healing is the day you can firmly believe, once again, that your feelings, your needs, and your boundaries fundamentally deserve to be respected. You have survived the erosion of your identity, and now you get to have the beautiful experience of rebuilding it, exactly the way you want to. If this video brought you some clarity today, or if it put words to a pain you have been carrying in silence, I want to invite you to share your story. Please, leave a comment below. Writing it out can be incredibly therapeutic, and reading your experiences will help someone else realize that they are not crazy, and they are not alone. And if you want to continue this journey of healing, understanding deep psychology, and taking your mind back, please subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more to talk about. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and take care. Thank you for watching.